The Secret History of the Credit Card, filmed by David Rummel and Nellie Keefe. Presentation by Destry Dispain. The people behind the film. David Rummel was a senior producer for news and documentary at the New York Times. Other works that he's worked on have included A Dangerous Business, which received 6 major journalism awards, while the print series was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service. The film was an exposé on McWane, Inc. He was also a senior producer for NBC News Dateline, a producer for CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace at 60 Minutes. He's received multiple awards and lots of recognition. He's received multiple Emmys, a Columbia DuPont Silver Baton, Goldsmith Prize for Investigative Reporting, multiple George Foster Peabody Awards, multiple George Polk Awards, multiple Investigative Reporter and Editors Awards, and multiple Overseas Press Club Awards. His education is a master's degree in journalism from the University of Missouri-Columbia and a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature from the University of Michigan. Our second producer was Nellie Keefe. She produced this film, but that's about it. Actually, that is it. The internet doesn't even have a picture of her. The film in 50 words or less. The Secret History of the Credit Card is a film that takes a look at the legislation, policies, and consumer knowledge within the credit card industry. In interviews with banking leaders, consumers, and governing bodies, we get a look at the credit card industry circa 2000. The average American family in 1984, we ended up with $87 billion in credit card debt. In 2004, we had 8 credit cards per household. In 2009, we continued to have 8 credit cards per household, but our debt jumped to $928 billion in credit card debt. Some random but interesting facts of the film. In 2004, MB&A cleared up 1.5 times the profits of McDonald's. Now, I'm not talking the entire bank. I'm just talking their credit card division pulled in 1.5 times the profits of McDonald's. In 2003, the banking industry cleared $30 billion in profits just, again, from the credit card divisions. We had 144 million Americans having credit cards, with an estimated $1.5 trillion charged in 2003. Sioux Falls, South Dakota has one of the busiest post offices in the nation, processing millions of credit card payments and solicitations on a daily basis. Now, let's talk about legislation. The Marquette decision of 1978, it allowed banks to export their interest rates to other states. What this means is that a state has no cap. If a state has no cap on interest rates, a bank could move to that state and set up shop. Then they can export the uncapped rate to any other state it operated or issued credit in, regardless of that state's cap. The beginning of the boom. Walter Wriston, who was CEO of Citibank at the time, moved Citibank's credit card division from New York to South Dakota in 1981 to take advantage of the state's repeal of its interest rate caps, which were around 7% at the time. The removal of the caps was an effort by the governor to bring jobs to the state. And it worked beautifully. With the arrival of one of the largest banking institutions in the state, the local job market flourished and money poured in. FICO. Who knows what FICO is? Fair Isaac and Company, Fair Isaac Corporation, later changed to just FICO. FICO score is it's a mathematical representation of credit risk that credit card issuers use to determine if you're worthy of credit. A median score is 720 and a total score of 850. The riskiest people all fall below 600. Now, the good, the bad, and the exceedingly ugly. The ability to shop out an interest rate was a boon, at first, especially for those that were under 600. Those customers labeled as high risk could get a bank loan at about 30%, but now they could get a credit card at around 19%. Now, obviously, 19% is better than 30%, but you also have to consider the agreement between the bank and the customer. A loan agreement is a set-in-stone document that has very clearly outlined strictures. The credit card agreement, on the other hand, leaves many openings to change rates, fees, and due dates. In fact, the rate of 19% may look good at first, but could quickly escalate higher. The final cost of that initial 19% could be much more than a fixed loan at 30%. Some more legislation that was mentioned in the film was Smiley versus Citibank. This was a court case that lifted restrictions on fees. Oh yay. The average fee immediately went from between $5 and $10 to about $39. Since the results of the Smiley verdict, fee revenue doubled. Now, They call me Daddy. The man most responsible for the modern credit card, Andrew Carr, his ideas and his legacy. Andrew Carr was the man that came up with the idea to drop the current 5% minimum payment down to 2%. The balance pays off slower to keep them paying longer. He was also the man that offered up the idea of an interest rate of 0% as bait. Now, it comes with some strings attached. If they miss a payment, they'd change the rate. If they underpay, change the rate. If they use the card, change the rate. Offered on balance transfers only. Lots of great ideas by Andrew Carr. Now, one of the other things to consider that the film brought up is the terms and conditions. You know, those things that no one ever reads. Now, one of the things to mention at the top of the list is the 15-day curse. It's not really called that, that's just what I called it. With 15 days notice, terms and conditions can be changed by the bank. Your interest rate can change, your credit line can change, your fees can change, your due date can change. Heck, your minimum payment can change. They can change anything they like. And all it takes is 15 days notice. Now, let's say that I bought a lovely watch on sale for $100. It was down from $110. I used my card at an 8% interest rate. That's okay, right? I'll pay it off well before the interest makes it cost more than $110, so it's still a great deal. Well, in the mail, I get a 15-day notice that my rate is about to go up to 29%. Well, crap. That's not such a great deal now, is it? Essentially, I purchased a product for $100. I knew it would cost me 8% in interest, so if I paid it off in about a year, I don't know, like $108, still better than $110. But now, 29% pops up. I've essentially bought a product at one price, and they changed the price of my product after I bought it. Surely there is a regulatory body in the United States that will rein in the industry. Of course there is. There's the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. The OCC is the regulatory body of our banking system. Their stated goals are to keep banks from failing, notice that's first, maintain integrity, and enforce fairness to customers. Well, that's all well and good, but surely there's somebody else that can help. The states. Of course. State institutions can also try to regulate the industry, but it's fairly easy for the OCC to call dibs. In fact, in January of 2004, the OCC declared itself the exclusive regulator, I said exclusive, of all national banks. What this means is the banks don't have to acknowledge the state protection laws. The state may petition the bank, but they don't actually have to respond. In fact, a great example is Providian, definitely on the naughty list. Providian specialized in risky customers and those with a low FICO score. Providian was accepting payments but not crediting them to accounts for up to several weeks later. In fact, Providian's income was 50% fees. That's right, not interest, but 50% fees. They eventually had to pay out a $300 million settlement, which I'm sure is all well and good, but how much money did they really make during that time? The Card Act of 2009, the Credit Card Accountability, Responsibility, and Disclosure Act. Companies cannot change an interest rate on an existing balance unless the customer has missed 2 consecutive payments. Companies are allowed to change the rate on new purchases, but must give 45 days notice. Due dates must be the same each month and are required to give at least 21 days for the bill to be paid for the possibility of a late fee. What this means is if your billing statement comes in less than 21 days, you're not even eligible to be charged a late fee. Now, late fees cannot exceed the minimum monthly due, $25 for a first offense or $35 for a second offense within 6 months. Companies cannot charge an overage fee unless the customer has opted to allow the company to process transactions beyond the credit line. The company may also only charge 1 overage fee per statement. Overage fees are also usually subject to the same rules as late fees. Monthly statements must outline the time it would take to pay off the balance at the current minimum due and the total cost if they were to do so. Each statement must also outline the savings, cost, and comparative cost to the minimum payment scenario if they were to pay the debt off in 3 years. Now, there were also other regulations that went into effect at about the same time, put in by the Federal Reserve Board. These regulations also require monthly statements to include interest charged year to date and total fees year to date. Now, let's look at our credit card banks in 2013. Originally, the credit card sections were mostly in the Midwest, but now we only see South Dakota and Nevada and New Mexico as the main ones. A lot of it has moved to the East Coast, yay us. Ohio, Delaware, North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Florida. These are where the main banks are now. In closing, let's just talk about a few things that the movie brought to light. Although the repeal of interest rate caps did initially bring about an upswing in local economies, it caused a terrifying shift in the economic stability of consumers as a whole throughout the nation. The hook, line, and sinker methods of the industry, along with the spotty oversight of regulatory bodies, has left us with a legacy of debt and financial burden that is just now beginning to abate. The Card Act and other regulations being enforced as of 2009 has just truly begun to curb the rampant entrapment of the banking industry. In no way, as individuals, are we exempt from blame. We chose to live outside our means. We chose not to read the agreements, although even if we had, who's to say we could have grasped them? We need to know what we're getting ourselves into at all times, to the best of our ability. It has taken nearly overwhelming debt to convince us that we're in over our heads.